Hello, welcome. Welcome to internals of a computer. This is an important topic. As a computer science student, you should know about it. You should know about the internals of a computer. And other branch students also should know about it, particularly EC students. So, because you will be working in different professions or in different jobs require this knowledge of different parts of a computer, knowledge of different parts of a computer. Suppose if you take computer forensics, so if you want to become a scientist and if you want to do the forensics of a computer, then you should know about the hardware component. You should know about the hardware component. It's not enough just if you know about the black box and then the monitor. Black box means the CPU where all these internal components are placed. You should know all these components of a computer or internals of a computer. The first one, what are the major components of a computer? If you open a computer, you will find huge number of components. Huge number of components. You will find huge number of components. Now, we can classify these things into two types: major components and then minor components. Major components and minor components. So, whenever you are purchasing a computer, you should know definitely about the major components. You should be able to specify the values for the major components. But minor components will also be there inside a computer and sometimes outside the computer also, which we should be aware of. If you don't know exactly, it doesn't matter. If you don't know exactly, it doesn't matter. But these major components you have to specify. Go to the market, and if you say, I want to purchase a computer, then you will ask what computer. So then you have to specify these components: microprocessor, main memory, hard disk, motherboard, switched mode power supply, cabinet or chassis. Microprocessor, main memory, hard disk, motherboard, switched mode power supply, cabinet. So these are the major components. We'll discuss each of these major components in the coming slides. Now coming to the minor components. The minor components can be many. The main things are DVD drive. You should know about DVD drive. And then you should know about these USB ports. And then the fans that are present. Remember, the components inside a computer generate a lot of heat. So there will be a cooling fan. And also, if you see at the back side, there will be an exhaust fan which removes the air from inside the computer, which sends it out. So apart from it, you need to know about the cache memory, particularly how much cache memory is required, and then read-only memory. Read-only memory, you may not specify the value, but read-only memory is important for working of a computer. And then CMOS battery, complementary metal oxide semiconductor battery. And then the networking interfaces called as wired interface and wireless interface. Whether you want wired connection or wireless connection, wired or wireless connection. And then the Bluetooth related capability. So it may come in the form of a card, it may come in the form of a chip on the motherboard. So these are all the minor components which you should know about. And then apart from these components that are present inside a computer, these major components, minor components are actually present inside a computer. But apart from these components which are present inside a computer, there will be other components which are present outside the computer but which are essential for us. For example, mouse. Mouse is a peripheral device. They are called as peripheral devices because they are not placed inside a computer, but they are outside the computer. So you require different peripheral devices. Mouse is one. The other one is keyboard. Apart from it, there are other kinds of devices also, peripheral devices. So peripheral devices are those which are present outside the computer. and which are connected to the computer. So list of peripherals is like this: keyboard and mouse, they are the two important things, and then joystick, which will be used in gaming scenario, which will be something like a gear rod, which you can move, so that the maybe the scene in the scene on the screen actually changes. If you are driving a car, then by using joystick you can control it. And then the web camera. So if you want to do any recording, or if you want to talk to any person and transmit your video, then you require a web camera. Printer, this is another important one, which is generally used by everybody nowadays. So previously only organizations used to have printers. Now individual persons are also purchasing printers, particularly laser printer. There are different kinds of printers also. And then the scanner, which can be used to scan images, etc. So the microphone, so which can be used for recording purposes. So for your audio recording, you require a microphone. And then the speakers, if you want to listen to voice or audio, you require speakers. So and then pen drive, which is generally used nowadays to read the data, write the data, or to collect the data from the computer, and also to transfer the data to the computer. Pen drives are used. And then external hard disk, if you want to have if you want to transfer more amount of data, then you can go for external hard disk, or you can go for external DVD drive. Of course, DVD drive will have limitations. So whenever you want to transfer large amount of data, then you go with the external hard disk. But of course, external hard disk costs more. One DVD costs maybe 15 rupees, 20 rupees. So you get 4.5 GB of data. There are other kinds of discs also, like Blu-ray disc, which have more capacity. But whenever you want to transfer large amount of data, then you go with the external hard disk. Okay. Now we will discuss each of the components individually. Central processing unit. The first component, the main component of a computer or computer, is named after central processing unit or microprocessor. Computer is named after central processing unit or microprocessor. So central processing unit is one which executes the programs. So suppose you write a C program, if you want to execute it, you require a processor. So it is the CPU which executes the programs. So it is the main processor. It is called a CPU because it is the main processor. Apart from the CPU, there will be other processors, particularly math processor, and then graphics processor. Nowadays, the importance of graphics processor is increasing because of this gaming, and then movies, and then virtual reality field. Because of it, the importance of graphic processor is increasing. So you will be purchasing a computer along with the graphics processor. Previously, these CPUs used to come in the form of a slot. So suppose this is the motherboard, into which CPU can be inserted in the form of a slot, the slot type. So nowadays they come in the form of a socket type. So you can consider these fingers as pins. So this is a flat surface, the processor. So using these pins, these pins will be inserted into that socket which is present. So there will be holes here, there will be holes here. So pins will be inserted into it, and of course it will be tightened. So I'm not showing you any diagrams now because I'm going to record a separate video. I'm going to record a video for it. I will show the parts then. Now also I can show it in the form of the diagrams, but they are static in nature. It's difficult. You get only a broad view. So instead, I will be explaining you about the components. I will be using my hands, and also I will be using these some other annotation tool, using this annotation tool also I will try to explain, but watch out for the separate video on the parts of a computer. The parts of a computer, I will also show you how to assemble a computer, etc. So if the CPU is reduced to the size of an integrated circuit, then it is called as microprocessor. So microprocessor and CPU are same. Nowadays, you can call CPU as microprocessor as CPU. CPU consists of the following components: control unit, arithmetic logic unit, registers, cache memory, and then clock. Control unit is one which controls the execution of instructions. So it will be responsible for generating what are called as signals. If you want to read from a keyboard, you have to generate a read signal. So it is the control unit which takes care of it. Read signal, write signal, etc. So control unit is one which controls the computer. And there is arithmetic logic unit which is responsible for performing arithmetic operations and logic operations. Arithmetic operations and then logic operations. Arithmetic means this addition, subtraction, etc. or arithmetic operations. Logic means so logical and logical OR operations. Logical and logical OR operations. So and means maybe if logical values, there are two logical values actually, true and false. So and logical and will be true if both are true. In the sense that suppose if you have two values, true and true, then logical and of those things is true, otherwise it is false. Similarly, you have logical OR, so which is true when either of this is true, true false, false true, true true. In all the three cases it will be true. So it will be false only if both are false. There are other operations also, exclusive OR operation, etc. Will discuss those things as and when required. So registers are small memory locations that are present inside the CPU. Registers are small memory locations that are present inside the CPU. They can occupy only few bytes of data. They are capable of storing only few bytes of data. They are limited in number. But because they are present inside the CPU, they are very fast. So whenever you have very important data, you try to store it in the registers. So next is cache memory. Cache memory is also nowadays present inside the processor. Some amount of cache memory is present inside the processor. Some maybe outside the processor also. We'll see. So cache memory is used to reduce the size of incompatibility in speeds between the CPU and main memory. So CPU is there, main memory is there. CPU operates at a very high speed, whereas main memory operates at a low speed when compared to the CPU. So to reduce this incompatibility, in between you will be having cache memory. So in detail we will discuss along with the memory. And there will be a clock also. So whenever you are running a program, whenever you are executing what are called as instructions, each instruction will take some clock cycles. So clock is basically for control the timing, for generating the time. Memory is the place where you store the data and programs. Apart from this images, video, etc. So in memory you can store the data and programs. So broadly, the memory can be divided into registers, cache memory, main memory, secondary memory, and then other things like floppy disk, compact disk, DVDs, tapes, etc. So you can consider this as a memory hierarchy. So if you consider this memory, consider this memory. So if you go down, if you go down, the cost decreases. The cost decreases. Go down, the cost decreases. Size also may increase. Size also may increase, but main thing is cost decreases. But to go in this direction, speed increases. That means registers are very fast when compared to cache memory. Cache memory is fast when compared to main memory, and then main memory is fast when compared to secondary memory, etc. Okay. The two main factors that are considered are cost and speed. So we don't have control over these registers and cache memory. Only thing we can do is we purchase appropriate computer. But this main memory, secondary memory, you can control. You can control in the sense that you can increase or decrease. You can increase or decrease the amount of main memory and secondary memory to some limited extent. For the current computer, it will have some capacity. So you cannot go beyond that capacity. If it is less than the capacity, then you can add more memory. That you have to check. But these are variable to a limited extent, main memory and secondary memory. And then this floppy disks, they have floppy disks, compact disks, etc. They will have fixed capacity. Depending on the requirement, you can use them. So first, registers. Registers are small storage locations that are present inside the CPU. So if you have an n-bit processor, then the size of registers will be n bits. So at present we are using 64-bit processors. 32-bit processors are also there, but we are using most of the cases 64-bit processors. That means the size of each register will be 64 bits. That means it is capable of storing only 64 bits of information. And each CPU will have different number of registers. Usually again it is limited. 10, 20, 30 like that. Not more than that. They are limited in number. Some of the typical registers are accumulator, program counter, data register, address register. We'll go into the details as and when required, but these are the registers. One that is more important for you, the other things you may study later, is program counter. Program counter contains the address of the instruction to be executed. You can say if you have within your program at a level of abstraction, if you have within the program say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., each will have some address. Let us assume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are itself are the addresses. So program counter contains 1 means, so that means the current instruction is first instruction. Program counter contains 5 means the current instruction is that is being executed is 5th instruction. So it's limited in capacity, and the number of registers is also limited. And coming to the cache memory is designed to bridge the speed gap between the CPU and main memory. So if you have CPU, then main memory, if you have CPU and main memory, then cache will be present in between these two. cache will be present in between. Nowadays, cache is also stored, some part of cache is also stored as part of CPU, as part of CPU. Okay, so L1 is inside the CPU. There are different levels of cache, L1, L2, L3. I think L4 is also available now. So usually L1 will be inside the CPU, L2, L3 are in a separate chip but connected to the CPU through a high speed bus. But for all the practical purposes, we'll assume that the cache is in between. Cache is in between. So that means part of the contents of cache are nothing but those that are present in main memory. So some of the contents of main memory are transferred to the cache, and this cache is fast when compared to the main memory. So CPU can quickly access these data or programming instructions that are present in the cache memory, and it results in increase in the speed of execution. This increases the speed of execution. So CPU is there. See, between you have cache memory. Cache memory. So cache is based on the principle of locality of reference. Locality of reference. That means suppose you are executing the program. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that program instructions are there. Suppose you are currently executing 2. Now what is the next instruction you are going to execute? Probably in most of the cases it will be 3. Most of the cases it is 3. So that is locality of reference. Locality of reference. Whenever you go to a particular memory location, the next memory location that will be accessed will be very close to it. Very close to it. So cache memory. Cache memory. Next is main memory. Main memory, otherwise called as primary memory, main memory or primary memory. So it is the one that is required for execution of the programs. If you want your program to be executed, it should be present in main memory. If you want your program to be executed, then it should be loaded into the main memory. In that case only program will be executed. The main memory can be divided into two types broadly: RAM and ROM. Random access memory, read-only memory. Random access memory and read-only memory. So for all practical purposes, RAM is considered as main memory. For all practical purposes, RAM is considered as main memory because you can write to it. Whereas for the read-only memory, as the name indicates, it's read-only. So you cannot write to it. And also RAM is volatile in nature. RAM is volatile in nature. RAM is volatile in nature. That means its contents will be intact as long as the power is on. If the power goes off, its contents are lost. So that is volatile. Whereas ROM, ROM is non-volatile. ROM is non-volatile. So both the memories are random access. Again, what do you mean by random access? Both the memories are random access. The diagram. 4. So let us say these are the addresses. These are the addresses where you can say the program instructions are available. Program instructions are available. Random access. Important point, just remember. Random access. That means it takes same amount of time. To access first instruction, third instruction, second instruction, fourth instruction. Takes same amount of time. To access the instruction. That's why it is called as random access. And also you can access any instruction in any order. That is randomness. Any instruction in any order. That means you can first go to the first instruction and then you can directly go to the fourth instruction. So sequential means if you want to access fourth instruction, first you have to access first one, second one, third one, and then fourth one. Random access means you can go to any instruction directly. So random access is otherwise sometimes called as direct access. Whereas if you consider ROM, ROM is also of type random access. Both RAM and ROM, don't get confused, both RAM and ROM are of random access. But only in case of RAM, that word random is there, random access memory. ROM is called as read-only memory. But both are random access only. But ROM is read-only. You cannot write to it. ROM is read-only. Whereas RAM is read and write. So whenever you are purchasing a computer, you should bother about this RAM. What is the RAM size? So typical size nowadays is 16 GB. Typical size nowadays is 16 GB. Okay. Typical size is 16 GB. Okay, typical size is 16 GB only. You want, you can have more amount of RAM. So whenever you are purchasing a computer, you should bother about the processor. What is the processor? Try to purchase a computer with latest processor. Don't compromise about the processor, because the main problem is processor you cannot change. You don't get compatible processors which can be used to replace the current processor. 99% of the cases you cannot replace. So purchase a computer with the latest processor that is available. Okay. And then RAM. Try to have more amount of RAM. So you should bother about two things. What is the RAM that is given by the manufacturer by default, and what is the expandability of RAM? Expandable to. So you have to know about two things. What is the size of the RAM that is present inside a computer, and to how much extent it can be expanded. Say 4 GB RAM expandable to 16 GB. That means you are getting at present only 4 GB RAM. But if you want, you can purchase separate RAM slots, and then you can add the RAM. With respect to RAM, you can expand to some limited extent. Just a minute. So can expand. So purchase a computer with the latest processor, and at present the typical RAM size is 16 GB. Don't go with the 2 GB, 4 GB RAMs. So because many applications will not run. Many softwares will not run. RAM can be broadly classified into two types: static RAM and dynamic RAM. Static RAM and then dynamic RAM. So static RAM is made of flip-flops. So flip-flop, you can say a storage device which is capable of storing only one bit of information. But you need not bother about what exactly is the flip-flop. We will study later about flip-flops, etc. But static RAM and then dynamic RAM. Static RAM and dynamic RAM. As the name indicates, static means it need not be refreshed. It need not be refreshed. Okay, it need not be refreshed. It need not be refreshed. Need not be refreshed. Whereas if you consider dynamic RAM, you have to refresh it. You have to refresh it. Because static RAMs are made of flip-flops, you do not refresh the static RAM. Because dynamic RAMs are made of capacitors, so you have to refresh. You have to refresh. We are not getting into the details of why flip-flops, why the capacitors, etc. So that is not necessary for you. That is not necessary for you. But as a user, you need not bother about whether flip-flops are used or capacitors are used. But point to be noted is, point to be noted is, the point to be noted is, so DRAM, dynamic RAM is used for main memory. Dynamic RAM is used for main memory, whereas SRAM is used for cache memory. SRAM is used for cache memory. Okay, static RAM, dynamic RAM. So dynamic RAM. DRAM is used as main memory. So whenever you are going for the whenever you are going to purchase the computer, you should bother about the DRAM type. You should bother about the DRAM type. So DRAM can be further divided into SDRAM, RDRAM, DDR, SDRAM, synchronous dynamic RAM, rhombus DRAM, and then double data rate SDRAM. So at present we are using DDR type of RAMs. DDR, double data rate. Okay, double data rate. So the RDRAM is used for graphics applications. Let us not get into those details, but we should bother about the DDR, double data rate. As the name indicates, is a double data rate, and you have different versions of it: DDR1, DDR2, DDR3, DDR4. So at present, DDR4 is running. So I think probably in another 3 months, 6 months, you may find in the market DDR5 also, DDR5 and DDR6. So people are trying to manufacture those things also. So, but you should know about, you should purchase a RAM of type DDR. If possible, DDR4 only. If possible, DDR4. Otherwise, if DDR5 is available, you can go for DDR5. So don't go with the DDR2 RAMs. DDR2 RAMs. The speed will change. The main thing is speed will change. Typical speed of DDR4 RAM is 2.4 GHz. So static RAM is generally used for cache memory. Dynamic RAM is used for main memory. Static RAM costs more, but speed will be high. Static RAM costs more, but speed will be high. DDR RAM or DRAM costs less, but speed will be relatively less when compared to SRAM. Nowadays, we are talking about this VRAM also, video RAM. So whenever you are interested in only gaming, if you work on game related software, then you have to bother about the GPU, graphics processor unit, GPU, and also this graphics memory, graphics related memory. Both are important. You should have best processor, you should have best RAM. Apart from it, if you want to go for gaming, etc., then you should have good GPU, graphics processing unit, and also the graphics related RAM, something like VRAM. You should have. RAM can be further classified like this: read-only memory, programmable read-only memory, electrically programmable, erasable programmable RAM, and then electrically erasable PRAM. Electrically erasable PRAM. So as the name indicates, it is read-only. That means you cannot write to the contents. If you want to write the contents, if you want to write the contents, then you should have special devices. Not that you cannot write, but you should have special devices which doesn't come along with the computer. You have to purchase them separately. Whenever you go for a repair, probably they may have those such devices. So programmable read-only memory, which can be programmed once, and erasable PRAM, whose entire content can be erased, usually using ultraviolet light. Using ultraviolet light, its contents can be erased. And new content can be written. Now, electrically erasable, that means using electricity you will be erasing. And you can erase selectively. So just know the difference. Okay. Erase entire content, whereas here erase selectively. Here you use ultraviolet light. So as a programmer or as a student, you do not bother about these things. But if you want to become a technician, or you want to work close at the level of hardware, then you should bother about these things. Otherwise, maybe from the exam point of view, you can study. Hard disk. Hard disk is a permanent storage device. So its contents are not lost when the power goes off. So it is non-volatile in nature. It is called as permanent storage device because once you write the content, it will be there. If you want, you can change the content. But if the power goes off, its contents are not lost. Contents will be there. So its contents are lost only when it gets damaged because of dust or because of some other reason, fire, etc. So in those cases, its contents may be lost. But in normal circumstances, it is a permanent storage device. So it actually consists of platters. I don't have this hard disk. It is difficult. We cannot go into the hard disk. It's difficult. We can only discuss it theoretically because you have to remove that hard disk. Once you remove it, it is gone. It's very difficult. Rugged type. But anyhow, it consists of platters. Hard disk consists of what are called as platters. This is actually a CD drive. But the platters will look similar to it. Suppose if we take, this is the platter. Okay. It consists of different platters. And one above the other, there will be platters. Typically, 2 to 4 platters will be there. And there will be what is called a spindle. Which can rotate the platters. So hard disk consists of different platters arranged one above the other, attached to a central spindle, and each you can write on both sides of a platter. So that means this side and also this side you can write. So on both the sides there will be what are called as read-write heads, something like this. Read-write heads. Okay. These read-write heads can write the contents. How they are written means by using electricity and magnetizing part, can write 1 bit or 0 bit, north pole, south pole, or south pole, north pole. Based on the orientation, it is treated as 1 or otherwise it is treated as 0. So hard disk consists of platters one above the other attached to a spindle, and there will be read-write writes above and below each platter, which are responsible for reading the data and also for writing the data, reading the data and writing the data. And so this we discussed. Both sides there will be read-write heads by using magnetization. So using electricity. Remember electric field, whenever electricity passes, magnetic field is induced. Probably you know about it. You might have studied in the physics. And each platter is divided into what are called as tracks. Each platter is divided into what are called as tracks. You can say they are the concentric circles, something like concentric circles. So each platter is divided into what are called as tracks, and each track is divided into what are called as sectors, like this. Let me try to write. So circles. Okay. So divided into what are called as circles, concentric circles. Assume these are the concentric circles. So each circle is called as track. This is one track. This is another track. This is another track. And each track is divided into what are called as sectors. So each track divided into what are called as sectors. So usually read writing it take place in terms of sectors. Sectors are considered to be capable of storing one block of information. So reading writing takes one block at a time. So there will be a spindle. Okay. So this will be rotating. These platters will be rotating. But if you consider these tracks, this is bigger one, whereas this one, if you consider this one, is smaller one. But each is capable of storing the same amount of information. How? That means the density will be less in the case of outer tracks. Density will be more in the case of inner tracks. So the typical rotation speed is 5400 revolutions per minute. So whenever you are purchasing, so you should bother about the hard disk also. So better you go with the 1 TB at present, 1 TB of hard disk, minimum of 1 TB of hard disk. Next is motherboard. Printed circuit board. Motherboard is printed circuit board. So motherboard is one onto which all the components are attached. That's why it is called as motherboard. All the components are attached to the motherboard. A flat surface is something similar to this one. This is also a PCB, but this is not motherboard. This is also a PCB. Hope you can see it. PCB. This green one. Green one is the PCB, printed circuit board. So this to the printed circuit board, all the components are attached. Your processor will be attached, your hard disk will be attached, your RAM will be attached, etc. So it will be actually different layers. 3-4 layers will be there. So you cannot see something like your exam pad. Something like your exam pad. But you can't see the layers unless you have specialized equipment. You cannot separate the layers, but it will be collection of layers. So many components will come on this, minor components particularly will come on this motherboard itself. The other components like hard disk, DVD drive, etc. will be connected using a cable. They will be connected using the cable. So this cable gets connected to the motherboard, and it gets connected to that device, hard disk. So if the hard disk is present here, this cable is connected to the hard disk, and also it is connected to the motherboard. So some devices come on the motherboard, some devices are connected using the cables. So technically you require two things. One is called as ribbon. It's called as data cable actually. Technically, or technician terminology is ribbon, and then you have these power wires. So two connections will be there. So this RAM will be inserted, hard disk will be connected. So RAM usually comes in the form of slots, and that will be inserted into what are called as expansion slots. So these printed circuit boards will be available even with the walk pens, etc. Now it's common in almost all electronic devices. So motherboard is actually a collection of copper layers, and so the different components on the motherboard are actually connected internally using wires. Sometimes you may see the wires also, sometimes you may not. They are called as traces. Using traces they are connected. Though they don't explicitly appear as a wire, you cannot remove the wire and see it. So they are all internal. If you are more interested, you can study more about this PCB, printed circuit board. So for the computer there will be points to which you connect different devices. They are called as ports. P-O-R-T-S. They are called as ports. Ports will be there both on the back side and front side of the computer. Nowadays we are going for more number of ports on the front side also. Ports will be there to which you can connect different devices. So like you want to have internet, you want to connect port, you want to connect a printer, etc. You require what are called as ports. Different ports will come for connecting different devices. The most popular port nowadays is USB port, to which you will be connecting your pen drive, which stands for Universal Serial Bus. Which is a industry standard. That means whenever you get any kind of device, and if it has a cable, and at the end of the cable, if you have USB port, then you can take it and connect it to the computer. So it doesn't matter what is the device type. Only thing is it should have USB port. So for purchasing a computer, then ensure that at least you have 4 front side ports, USB ports, apart from these audio ports. So try to have at least 4 USB front side ports, because nowadays everything is connected using USB only. So it's better if you have more number of USB ports. Of course, there will be expansion cards also, expansion devices, multiplexer devices are available. You can purchase them also. And the other major component is SMPS, which stands for switched mode power supply. The main purpose of it is to convert AC to DC, alternating current to direct current. And this direct current is applied to the different components, and different components of a computer require different voltages. Suppose hard disk, DVD drive, etc., because they have motor, they require more voltages, typically 12 volts, whereas other devices may require 5 volts, 3.3 volts. So it is the SMPS which converts AC to DC and supplies this DC power to different components of a computer. The components of a computer require DC. So this is regarding the internals of a computer. We have not discussed these things, minor components in detail. Minor components in detail. That will be covered in a separate video. Will be covered in a separate video. Also, we'll discuss peripherals also later. Peripheral devices. So minor components. So DVD drive, cache memory, read-only memory, CMOS battery, etc. CMOS battery small, 25 pice coin. Probably no 25 pice coin or 50 pice coin. It will be like that only. Battery. So usually even the wristwatches have this type of batteries. Wristwatches have this type of batteries. So you can connect different devices. You can connect different devices. So the complete discussion is beyond our scope. We are not going into the details of each and every device. So thank you for joining for this session. But this session is important, and this session will be followed by, at the end of the module, a video explaining all the components of a computer, also how to do the assembling of a computer. So you can purchase two types of computers actually. So one is assembled computer, the other one is branded computer. That is up to you. Branded and assembled computer. Okay. You try to find out the difference, and depending on your requirement, you can purchase. If you have a reliable supplier, and if he is capable of doing the service, then you can go for desktop which is assembled. Okay, you can go for the desktop which is assembled. Whereas if you don't have a reliable salesperson, then it's better you go with the branded one with some comprehensive on-site survey. Comprehensive on-site service. Because if you have comprehensive on-site service, they will come and repair at your home. Their responsibility. So you can go for that one for 3 years comprehensive on-site warranty. It's worth. You will be paying little bit more money, but it's worth. So laptop computer, if you want to purchase a laptop computer, it's better you go with the assembled one, the branded one only. Because you don't find service personnel capable of servicing these laptops. They will say they have to send to the Bangalore, Hyderabad, to the major cities for most of the services. So this is important part. We'll come back to it in the form of video later. Thank you. Best of luck.